Hello, hello, hello. This is Art Ville with the Least Offend podcast. This is season 1, episode 3. I want to thank you for joining us for this podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to choose the right investment niche to make the maximum profit for yourself. Now, this particular podcast is very near to my heart because when I started out in real estate, which was about 20 years ago, wow, it sounds really weird saying that, but when I started out in real estate, the first thing I did was I went to a real estate seminar on how to invest in real estate. And luckily, I was blessed to go to a seminar that had one of the greatest, to me, the forefather of real estate investment. His name is Ron LeGrand. He was one of the speakers at the seminar, and he did a great presentation. And I had very little money, but I was convinced to go in the back and buy his products. And it was one of the best purchases I ever made because it changed my life. But having said that, one of the issues that comes up, and it will come up with you if you're a newbie or some seasoned investors have this same problem. One of the issues that comes up is how to choose which way you want to invest. Um, when I first started out, everybody tells you that you can make millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars doing this one thing or doing that one thing. And when you first start out, they all sound great. You know, whether it's wholesaling or flipping or renting to own or just straight rentals or mortgage takeovers or subject to financing or just all these different ways you'll hear about investing. If you don't know any of those investing terms or any of those ways, I can, drop me a note in the comments and I can expand on what those are. But when you're faced with all of these different ways to invest, you're not really sure how to get started. And it's very confusing, especially as a newbie, to pick a niche of what you should invest in. Well, I wanted to demystify a little bit of that today and talk about how I chose the niche that I invested in and what I learned as far as choosing a niche and what are some, in my experience, what are some of the things you should look at when you're making a decision on which way you want to invest. So, the first thing, let me tell my story about how I chose a niche. When I got all this information and got back home, I had these 3 large booklets, and one was about wholesaling real estate. One was about options and doing lease options on real estate, and another was about subject to financing. And these covered a wide variety of ways to invest. You could turn a quick profit with wholesaling, which sounded very good to me because I needed money now. You could make a cash flow get a cash flow going with lease options and turn a nice penny at the end, turn a good profit at the end of a lease option. Or you could do subject to and just make a long-term cash flow over time, but you didn't have to come up with much money. And so I didn't know which one to choose. And someone gave me some very good advice. It's funny when you go to these seminars, a lot of times you go to the seminar and you plan on getting information from the person that's hosting the seminar, the speaker. But what ends up happening a lot of times is that you'll talk to people at the seminar, and some of them that are just the participants in the seminar will give you such good information or give you new ideas that you didn't consider, and they'll make everything. You'll get just as much from those people as you do from the people that are actually hosting the seminar. So I was at one of these seminars. I was sitting with a gentleman, and he gave me his rundown on how to choose a niche because I just felt overwhelmed, and I was talking to him about it over breakfast. And he said, "There's a couple of things you should look at. The first thing you should look at is what assets or what resources do you have now. If you don't have any money, meaning any investment capital, if you don't have any knowledge of real estate, if this is your first attempt into real estate and you're just trying to get your feet wet, then I would not suggest you look at a deal to get cash flows. The reason I say that is because a lot of times to set up and in some cases maintain a cash flow deal, you end up you need some cash up front, and it might not be much, but If you don't have any investment capital and you need $3,000 or $5,000 to make a deal work, then it might as well be, $300,000 if you don't have the money. So I would not suggest going first into trying to build cash flows. Now, cash flows are always attractive because the first thing you think with the cash flow is, I can set this thing up and then I can sit back and I can collect money from it for, forever, for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And while that's not entirely true, you can collect money from a cash flow investment, but at the same time, you need to have some reserves and you need to have some money kind of sitting on standby in case something comes up. Because with cash flow properties, a lot of times things can come up that are unexpected. So you want to be careful of that, especially with fees from the villages or the cities that you're in, taxes or anything like that that can come up that can be a surprise. You want to have some reserve. So the other option is to look at quick turn real estate. Now, quick turn real estate is when you're wholesaling something, when you're basically you find a deal, and when you find that deal, you find someone that's willing to pay more than you got for the deal, and then you sell that deal to them and you make a profit. That's typically called wholesaling. Wholesaling is definitely a way to get your feet wet and to get into the business. One thing I do like about wholesaling is that you will learn a lot about how to value real estate, how to assess repairs on real estate. You will learn a lot about how to deal with other investors and what other investors expect of someone. Typically, people that find deals for investors are called bird doggers or wholesalers. You'll learn from the bigger, more seasoned investors what they want, what they don't want, why they want this, why they don't want that. Now, you can get burned on these kind of deals, but the important thing to remember is for the amount of time and energy and effort you put into one of these wholesaling deals, it's not like it's impossible to, you may get burned on a deal or two, especially while you're learning, but at the same time, you have the ability to earn while you learn. So you'll earn a lot of money while you figure out how to learn this business. Let me give you an example. So when I first started out as a real estate investor, I decided to do a couple of wholesale deals. I've done almost every kind of investment. I've done everything because I had to figure out what I liked and didn't like. And when I first started out, I was wholesaling deals. I worked at a bank. I won't give out the bank's name, but I worked at a bank. I was an auditor for bank files. And decided I wanted to go into real estate. I did not like my banking job, and so I was looking at I was going into wholesaling. I was looking for deals, and I was putting out advertising and finding ways to find buyers. And one of the most important things you'll learn with wholesaling, which I didn't realize at the time, but it kind of caught up to me, is that the deal is actually not where you make your money. You actually make your money on building a good list of buyers, people that want to buy from you and that are looking for deals, that have money, that are ready for you to find a deal. Because once you find the deal is the deal. So if you've got buyers already lined up, you don't have to go through advertising and trying to find someone and working against the clock to find a buyer before your contract expires. You can just do your deal and move on. And so when I started at the bank, when I decided I wanted to do real estate at the bank, I was advertising and I ended up getting a call from a woman. A woman had a house. Her husband and her had separated. She had moved to California. Her husband still lived in Chicago. They had never actually gotten a divorce, but they had separated, and they had been separated for probably 4 or 5 years. Her husband had passed, and she was the next in line to receive his property. So she came back to Chicago specifically to sell this property that her husband had, that he had owned free and clear. She called me. I came over and looked at the house, and the house was a nice house. It wasn't anything fancy. It needed work. It needed to be repaired. And I made her an offer. I looked at how much it would take to repair it, what it would be worth when it was finished. I made her an offer. She accepted the offer. I gave her $100 to hold the contract to make it viable. And then I proceeded to call investors that I knew that might be interested in buying the property. I found an investor after about 30, 45 minutes of phone calls. I found an investor that was interested in the property. and he came out to look at the property. I actually told her that he was a contractor that was coming with me to look at the property. This was classic old school wholesaling. I told her he was a contractor. He came out and looked at the property, brought his contractor, went through the whole house. He decided he wanted to buy the house. We went back to the car. We put together a contract right there on the spot. He agreed to buy the house, and we did a double closing. Now, double closings aren't as common nowadays, but they can be done. I know when the market crashed, there was a lot of crackdown on double closings, but we ended up doing a double closing, and that first deal, it was worked out extremely well. I walked away with, I think, $35,000, either $35,000 or $40,000 in profit on that one deal. The woman got her money that she wanted for the house. I got my money. The guy got the house, and then he was able to turn around and fix it up and sell it, and everybody was happy. Now, the key is not the $35,000 or $40,000. As much as it seems like, wow, that's a great deal, because it took, a couple of hours and some negotiation. But the key was that once I sold this guy the house, he was so happy with the deal that I put together a good deal for him that he had a partner. When we were at the closing table, he told me, hey, if you got any other deals, let me know. I'd definitely be interested. We could probably do some more business. And then I think he got up and went to the bathroom at the closing. While he was in the bathroom, his partner told me, hey, if you got any deals, I'll pay more than my partner does. Just call me directly. And he passed me his card. So this is a way to build up. And the reason that's important is because I was building up a buyer's list of people that I knew had cash in hand and that could buy my deals. And that's what you want to focus on if you're wholesaling. Now that I have this, or now that I had the $35,000 or $40,000, now I could turn and look at, buying some properties that would be longer term, cash flow investments. So that's probably the best way to do it. The negative of wholesaling deals is twofold. One, if you go on vacation, if you go do something else, then a lot of times your cash flow stops. So if I'm doing deals and I'm trying to turn a deal every month or every other month, and I decide to take my family on vacation to Disney World, then you don't make any money while you're in Disney World. Your business, your cash flow machine stops because you're not wholesaling deals, you're not finding deals, you're not knocking on doors, you're not meeting with people. So that's one of the negatives. You have to constantly be doing it. But at the same time, you can quickly build a reserve. Now, that's not a typical wholesale deal. Typical wholesale deal profits range anywhere from $3,000 to maybe $5,000 or $10,000. But sometimes you get a good deal and you're able to turn a $30,000 to $40,000 profit. I've even heard of investors turning wholesale deals on commercial property and walking away with $150,000 profit. So it is possible. It does take some work, but that's the niche. If I'm starting out, I would focus on that niche. I would focus on doing something that's one and done. Kind of set it up and get it done, and then get some cash flow or get some cash in. Once you got some cash in, then you can really don't take the money and spend it, but take it and invest in your business and really ramp up your buying machine to buy more properties. Either buy more quick flips that you can turn around and wholesale, or buy properties that you can long-term keep for cash flow. Now, you might be wondering, well, how much did you put into fixing up the house or anything like that? I did absolutely nothing to fix up that house. I actually just brought a buyer and a seller together and played the middleman and walked away with a good profit from the middle. And so I know there might be questions about that, and if there are, I can discuss it later, because what stopped your investor from just cutting you out of the deal and that kind of thing. And those questions do come up, but put it this way: if you're determined and you're focused on how to make a deal work, you can make a deal work, and you can make everybody stay in their place. You can protect yourself very easily. And if you're dealing with people that will go behind you and steal the deal, you probably don't want to do business with them anyway. They may get that one deal from you, but it's in their best interest not to steal a deal from you, because if you're any good at what you do, you'll continue to bring in deals to them and they'll continue to make money. So they could cut you out of your money for a short time, but they will be, cutting their nose off to spite their face, because they wouldn't get any more deals from you. So again, if you're choosing a niche, look at where you're at. Look at if you're investing with some cash behind you, or if you're investing with nothing behind you. If you're doing something where you have cash behind you, I would definitely look at cash flow, because cash flow will be continuous, and you can make money on the back end as well as the front end, and over time. So typically, when I do a rent to own property, I can make $3,000 to $5,000 down when the person moves into the house. I can also make, $300 or $400 a month in monthly cash flow, and then I can make probably $20,000 to $50,000 on the back end when they actually buy the property. Now, there are some moving pieces in that it's not just to sit back and wait for the money to roll in to get to get the buyer, or to get the house sold. But that's typically what you're looking at with the rent to own. That's why I'm a big advocate of rent to own, because the cash flow is great, and the payout at the end is great if you set everything else up right, and you're helping people. You help tenants buy a home, and you make a profit. So you're winning on both sides. You help the tenant, you helped yourself, and everybody wins. So that's why I like rent to own as a long-term strategy. But you have to look at what's right for you, where you're coming from. If you don't have experience, I definitely suggest you start off wholesaling and start off dealing with investors to kind of get a feel for the landscape, and you have to get used to your market and where you're buying at. If you're going to go, if you have some money, and again, even if you have money on your own, I would probably suggest you start off wholesaling. One of the lines that Ron LeGrand gave me when I was at a seminar of his was the fastest way to, there are two ways to lose money in real estate. The first way is to write a big check. Anytime you write a big check, you run the risk of losing that money. So that's the first way. The second way is to sign your name to a lot of debt. So if you sign your name to a lot of debt, you run the risk of losing that money or that investment going south. So when you're wholesaling and starting out, and you're working with other investors, you'll quickly learn the business and the ins and outs, and it won't cost you anything. You're not signing any big checks. You're not signing your name to any debt. You're just turning properties and turning a profit. Once you've got a little bit of knowledge, I would definitely consider going into the long-term deals and the cash flow deals, because the cash flow is great. And when you do go to Disney World, the cash flow will continue to pay you, provided you set everything up right. So that's it for this week, and that's it for this podcast. I hope you've gotten some information. I hope it's helped you to make it easier to make a decision. These are not the only ways to invest, but these are two ways that I learned and that I focused on originally when I started my business. There are always different ways to invest, but make sure you ask yourself the right questions. I hope you've gotten something from this. If you have questions or comments or thoughts on any of this, then please comment below. I'll respond as quickly as I can. And I'd like to get a community going. I'd like to get people talking about what I'm talking about and giving their feedback and giving their thoughts and ideas. So until next time, I look forward to speaking with you. I hope that you are well. This has been Art Field with the Lease to Fin podcast, and have a great day. Goodbye.